One of the hardest things to do, especially in this generation, is keep our eyes on God. Because many of the times we start to focus on the distractions or even other people's calling, and it causes us to get our minds on something else or not keep our minds on Christ. And the way that you are able to be successful in this kingdom is by actually keeping your mind on God. The word tells us to seek the kingdom first and all its righteousness, and everything else will be added on to us. And so if we are seeking God's will for our life, what God wants us to do in our life, then naturally things will start to come. And so you have to learn exactly how to keep your mind on God even in the midst of the trials and tribulations. One of the most important stories that actually relates to this specific topic is when Peter and Jesus walked on water. Because when Peter stepped out in faith, a lot of us do the same thing. We step out in faith at first because we get set on fire, we get motivated, and we step out in faith. But then when we see trials and tribulations come, when we don't see things going our way, then we look around at those troubles and instead of keeping our minds on God, we look at the troubles, and that causes us to sink and drown with all these problems of anxiety, these problems of stress, because we don't think that things are going to go good. But the word tells us that all things work out for the good for those who love God. And so if you truly love God with all your heart, no matter if things are going bad right now, no matter if things are going bad for a while, all of those bad things that are happening are working for the greater good. And so that's why it's important to keep our minds on God, keep our eyes on God, so that we can continue to love God and we can have good in the future instead of bad. We know that good is being set free. We know that good is being prosperous. We know that good is all of these things that are better for our life and true peace in our heart. And so that's why in this video, I'll be talking about how you can actually keep your mind on God so that you can have a future that is filled with the good things that God has for you. And the first way to keep your mind on God is by living a not caring life, meaning that you don't care about what people say about you. You don't care about man, but the only thing you care about is God. And I'm not saying that you don't care about people and you treat them any type of way, but no, you don't care about the circumstances you get put in. No matter what happens, you are still going to love and serve Christ. When you live like that, that is when you can be like a tree, as explained in Psalms chapter 1, where we're supposed to be like a tree in the midst of the storms, and where we don't blow and toss around and we don't fall down because we are standing strong. We have our roots grounded within Christ. And so that's why it's important that you don't care, because emotions can sway us one way. Emotions can sway us away from the truth, away from God. But when you don't care about your emotions, but you just focus on the truth, that is when you are able to live that life that God has for you. That's when you're going to be able to get through the storms that God is going to put in your way, because there's going to be trials and tribulations. Just like Job, if you're going through trials and tribulations, reading Job is a perfect story to read. But just like Job went through a whole bunch of trials and tribulations and still stood firm, even when his peoples, like his friends, were telling him, oh, curse God, even when his wife was telling him to curse God, he stood firm in Christ because he didn't rely on his emotions. He didn't even care about the circumstances he got put in. Yes, it was painful. Yes, it was hard for him to go through. Yes, he didn't understand. And so he was asking God questions. But at the end of the day, he still stood firm and loved God even through the midst of the trials and tribulations. And that's what we must do. And so no matter how weary we are, no matter how tired we are, we must continue to stand firm. And number two, the second way to continue to keep your eyes on God is to have faith. We can't let those emotions, the storms and trials and tribulations to come in the way of our faith, because as soon as our faith starts to deter, we start to lack faith in thinking that, oh, God is not going to provide the life I desire because all this bad stuff is happening. It's taking too long for me to reach the breakthrough that I want. And so I'm going to try to do it on my own. I'm going to stop reading the word. I'm going to just stop following my heart and just chase after this job and try to stack up this money and then, invest it somewhere, and trying to do things on your own. When you do that, that is when you will start to lose faith. And not only will it get harder on you, but you will have less peace. You will have more anxiety. You will have more stress going through that whole situation. And so that's why it's important that you continue to have your faith in God, because with God, there's peace. It's less of a burden. And at the end of the day, you will be prosperous and things will turn out for the greater good because you kept your faith strong in God. And the example that's in the Bible is in Joseph in the beginning, Genesis, when Joseph had got shown a vision from God, a dream that he was going to be king over his brothers and over Egypt. He was going to be king over many people. And even in the midst of all the trials and tribulations he went through, when he got put into slavery, when he got, thrown in the ditch by his brothers, when everything was going wrong, even when he was rising and then got thrown into prison, he still stood firm in God. He still loved God, even through the midst of the trials and tribulations. And so a lot of people don't even understand that took 13 years. He had the vision, and it took 13 years of work in being lowly, being a servant, for him to finally be king. And so a lot of us want this quick success, thinking that we don't have to go through the trials and tribulations, think we can get in like 3-4 years right after college and just think we're going to have the life that we desire. But as long as we continue to stand firm in God, even in the midst of the trials and tribulations, even in the midst of that time, the time will go by faster when you're with God, because your mind is always on God, and you're able to be more patient. And that brings me to step number 3, is being patient. Because if you're hasty with God, then you're going to end up turning against him fast, because the enemy wants things fast. God and the enemy will give you the things fast. And that's where he comes. He comes and attacks your patience. And so if you're lacking patience, you might end up falling back into temptation, because you feel like it's going to be too long for you to be able to hold on to that temptation or away from that temptation. And so you're going to start to take your mind off Christ, maybe because you get bored, maybe because you don't see a future in it, whatever it is. You're going to start to lack patience because your eyes are not on God. Another thing is success. If you don't see the success right away from God, you might start turning to other things, start trying to do it your way. When you know God is telling you to go one way, you go the other way because you think that God's way is going to take too long, or you think that you're not going to get the life that you desire in the time that you want it. And so you try to take it your way instead of letting God work in your life. And the way that you are able to continue to be patient is, first, have faith, and second, continue to live in the Spirit. Because if you're living in the Spirit, learning more about God, serving other people, when you have a servant mindset, that is when you are going to be able to be more patient, because you're doing things for other people when you're not doing it for yourself. And if you look at the life of Jesus, that's exactly what happened to him. When he was so focused on God and serving people, that is when his ministry grew so much to the point where he started to get haters and people who love him. And that's going to be the same thing here on this earth. If you are so focused on God and your purpose, and you are actually walking in faith, trusting God, and you're actually doing it to serve people, you will be able to do greater works than maybe even Jesus, because Jesus says y'all will do greater works than even me. So if you're focused on people and not focused on yourself, and you're actually having faith in what God is putting on your heart, that is when you'll be able to wait, no matter how long God puts on your heart, no matter how long God tells you to wait. So yeah, if you want to make sure that you are keeping your eyes on God, make sure that you are following these steps, especially the last one. Make sure you are living a life not for yourself, a selfless life, living life for God and for other people, and not for yourself. Because as soon as you start to wonder, like, God, where is it in for me? Why am I not getting the certain stuff? Why is he getting stuff and I'm not? Once you start envying people and start looking at other people instead of focusing on yourself, focusing on what God has for you, that is when you will start to be impatient and start turning away from God and start wanting to do the things that don't really matter here on this earth. So yes, just make sure that you are doing these things to keep your mind on God, and make sure that you are remembering to keep your mind on God. Because this video could just be a reminder for you. Because I know it's hard being in a situation where you don't know where your future is going. I know it's hard to be in a situation where you think you're working for so long and it feels like you're not going anywhere. It could be really, really hard. It could even be to the point where you're going downhill, where you feel like you're working and it's going worse for you. But just remember, there's people in the Bible who had to go through the same thing as you. And just remember that God is always working things out for the greater good. And none of your work will go to waste. So yes, I hope this video was a blessing to you. I appreciate you for watching. I appreciate all the support. And if you want help growing closer to God and getting away from temptation, I have created a free course. It is down in the link down below. But if not, appreciate you for watching. I appreciate all the support. And if you want to support, the link is down below. But if not, till next time, as usual, y'all stay blessed.